Shalom, shalom. What's good? What's good? Um, Want to start off by giving all praises, and we do so with call Allah Yahweh Bahashem Mashiach Yahweh Shai. That is all praises to the Most High God and His Son Yahweh Shai. Right. Um. So yeah, I know you'll see the title. You know how they took us down. How are they able to rule over us if we're this great people called the Israelites, God's chosen people? How are these people ruling over us? Why are we at the bottom of society? You know, in almost all the statistical categories that they got here, right? So we're gonna break it down scripturally and get some understanding, right? And because these people understand who we are. You know, we the ones that don't understand who we are. We the ones going around calling ourselves black, African American, you know, Negro, Negro, all these different terms that we use to call ourselves, you know, that was actually placed upon us, you know, even calling ourselves American or whatever, right? You know, because if you ask five different black people what's their nationality, you might get five different answers, you know, so, and it's all confusion. So we're going to see why, you know, go into the reasons why, you know, how they're able to continue to have a foothold over us, right? You know, they might have took the shackles off of our necks, but it's still on our mind, you know, and we're gonna see why. And I'm not talking about the average, everyday, you know, type of person that might know this information, but the elites, you know what I'm saying? The you know, the who we might call the Illuminati, or you know, the elites. They know exactly who we are, you know, and that's why they work so hard and spend millions and millions of dollars to keep us misinformed, right? So, and to get this information, to get it, you know, we're gonna start off with the book of Judith, right? Which is in the Apocrypha, right? You know, in the book of Judith, we're gonna start off in chapter 5, right? But like I said, we gotta understand how this thing works, because just like how we can read Joel 2:27, and it tells you verbatim that God is only our God and none else, and like it tell you in Deuteronomy 4:19, how He's only dealing with us and He's our God, and He created other gods for the other nations for them to worship. You know, and also in Deuteronomy 32:8, how He tells you how He gave them over to those different things to worship. Um, Psalms 147 and 20, how it tells you that He only dealing with us. Amos 3:1, how it tells you that He only dealing with us. So, but those certain things don't, you know, seem to resonate with us. But we think, because we've been indoctrinated thinking that this is a universal book, when in reality, this book is, you know, it's not inclusive, it's exclusive, you know. So, and we're going to, you know, get to understand it. Because, like I said, back then they knew who God He was. It wasn't no mistaking about who Yahweh Thy Power was the God of. They knew that, uh, uh, you know, call Allah Yahweh was our God, right? So let's get a Judas, right? So, and we're gonna get into the story of Judith too, because Judith was a mighty sister from the tribe of Manasseh. And when you understand the tribe of Manasseh, Manasseh will be what we'll call the Cuban people today, the Cubans today. You know, she was from, you know, if she was living today, she'd be considered a Cuban. She was from the tribe of Manasseh. This mighty woman Judith. And it's important to understand too that we have some very mighty women that came out of our nation, and we still do got mighty women in amongst our nation. But so you got to understand that us Israelites love our women. We will die for our women. We'll rob, rob, cheat, steal for our women. As what's that wrestler Eddie Guerrero? Eddie Guerrero used to say his theme music, right? So I'm just saying, the point being that we love our women, and we got the best women on the planet. So with that being said, we're gonna get into the book of Judith. Then also, hopefully later on we can get into the what made Judah so mighty, her having that warrior spirit to fight for her people. You know, so this is Judith. We're gonna start at chapter 5, verse 1. And it says, and then it declared unto Holofernes, the chief captain of the army of Ashur, that the children of Israel had prepared for war. Right, so we're getting ready for a war to go against these Ashur people, right? And if my memory serves me right, don't quote me on this. This was during the Persian and Me thing, I believe, and I think this guy that was ruling during this time was like he was like what we might call an Indian, today an East Indian guy with the red dot. I think because we was in captive to them people at one point in time, and so I think he's the ruler right now. He's the head, the global power right now. The Persians and the Medes. Because that was like a big empire between the Persians and the Medes. Stretching all the way to India. So, but don't, like I said, don't quote me on it. But I believe this is during that time. So it says, then it was declared unto Holofernes, the chief captain of the Ashur, and the children of Israel had prepared for war, and had shut up the passes of the hill country, and had fortified all the tops of the hills, and had laid impediments in the Champagne countries. So we basically, closed down shop. Nobody in, nobody out, because it's wartime. And so we fortified certain areas so in case these people try to attack us, we'll be able to have a jump on them. And then in the Champagne country, because, we was known for our wine. We make wine, and so we even, shut down those areas so we can be able to, see the enemy when they come in, right? It says, wherewith he was very angry and called all the princes of Moab. Now Moab is the ancient biblical nationality of the so-called Chinese people. Nowadays we call them Chinese, but during this time they were known as the Moabites, Moab. So it says, wherein he was very angry and called the princes of Moab and the captains of Ammon. And Ammon is the so-called Japanese. Today we will call them Japanese, but back then they were known as Ammon, right? And all the governors of the sea coast. And he said unto them, tell me now, ye sons of Chisan, who is this people? So this Ashur king is asking his generals, man, who are these people? The Israelites, he's inquiring about us because we're coming off different. We're not backing down from them. We're not cowering. So he want to know exactly who we are. So it says, and he said unto them, tell me now, ye sons of Chanton, who is this people that dwell in the hill country, that are the cities that are inhabited, and what is the multitude of their army, and wherein is their power and strength. So he's trying to see how to break us down, like what's what's about these people? Like, who's these people? Give me a little inside scoop. What's their strength? What's their weakness? Tell me something about these people, right? And what king is set over them, or captain of their army, and why they have determined not to come and meet me more than the inhabitants of the West. So he's like, man, like all these other nations, they bow down to me. They ready to come to terms and talk, but these people, they not backing down from what they believe in. Because that's how our ancient people were. That's how our ancestors were. We didn't back down. We didn't, change our position because of little threats. We was ready to die for what we believe in. So, and he's asking like, why do they have this type of, attitude about themselves? What's going on with them? We want to know. Uh, and then said, Ankanor, the captain and the sons of Ammon. Remember, Ammon is the so-called Japanese, but back then they were called Ammon. So it says, "And Ammon, let my Lord now hear a word from the mouth of thy servant." So now this guy is like a captain of what's the name? Holofernes army, right? Cause you gotta understand, like when when these like the Persian and Medes took over the known world, and they, just like y'all saw the movie 300, right? I'm pretty sure y'all all saw the movie 300, or most of us saw the movie 300. And so when he was fighting against Leonidas and them people, right? It wasn't just the Persian army. He had all the other armies of the nations that he captured, that he took control of. So as we reading here, because this is how you know this is a history book that we reading. We're not reading religion. This is history. So so now this king, which is a king that we can read about in history. So he has the Japanese nation, was so-called Japanese people today that we would call them Japanese. So he has their army also engulfed into his nation, and he has them fighting for him. So now he has this general, and he's asking them, to explain who we are. So then, where are we at? Boom, boom, boom. Then said, Akanor, the captain and sons of Ammon, let my Lord now hear a word from his mouth of his servant, and I will declare unto thee the truth concerning this people, which dwell near thee, in the inhabitants of the hill country, and there shall no lie come out the mouth of thy servant. So he's like, man, I'm going to tell you about these people, right? Because I happen to know a little something about these people. Because when you do the history, like Ammon and Moab, which would be the so-called Japanese and Chinese people, they technically they're descendants of Lot, and Lot was Abraham's nephew. So they know a great deal about us, right? And then we have some battles with these people also throughout the years. So and that's why too, when you look at ancient pictures of Chinese people, they look dark skinned just like me, and just like a lot of us. So Ammon and Moab, which was Japanese and Chinese people, like I said, like the original, like a lot of, I ain't gonna say the original, because like if you go to the country, you'll see a lot of dark skinned Chinese people. They just don't show them on TV like that. Just like they always show light skinned, fair skinned Mexicans, but when you go to Mexico, you see Mexicans dark like me. So yeah. Anyway. And these people are descendants of the Chaldeans. They are sojourned herefore in Mesopotamia, before they would not follow the gods of their father, which are in the lands of Chaldea. So he's giving them a little history of our people, because just like like how the president had a briefing report supposedly every day. The president go to the Oval Office or wherever they meet at, and they had their little briefing about what's going on in the world. So he's giving them a little briefing of who we are. So then he said, for they left the way of their ancestors and worshiped the God of heaven, the God whom they knew. So they cast them out from the face of their gods, and they fled into Mesopotamia and sojourned there many days. Right. So, like I said, it's giving a breakdown of who we are. This Japanese general is telling this Assyrian leader, king, of who we are. Right. He's giving them the history. So then, he says, and then their God depart. Then then their God commanded them to depart from the place where they sojourned and to go into the land of Canaan, and where they dwelt and increased with gold and silver and much cattle. So over the years, we became rich, became a rich nation, doing our thing, right? When the famine covered all the land of Canaan, they went down into Egypt and sojourned there, while they were nourished and became a great multitude, so one could not number their nation. So we became a mighty people. We start multiplying, becoming a big nation, right? And just like how now, a lot of us multiply, even though like through the whole crack epidemic, it didn't slow us down from making children. Even when they tagged us with the AIDS in the 80s, it didn't mess with us. Our population is still growing. That's why they tell you that, what is it, by 2050 or some shit like that, or probably before, that the majority of our people is going to be Black and Hispanic people in this country. That's why they, trying their best to try to, dwindle the population, right? But that's a whole another story. So it said, but the famine covered the land in Shanahan, and they went down into Egypt and sojourned there, while they were nourished and became a great multitude, so that no one could number their nation. Therefore the king of Egypt rose against them and dwelt steadily with them and brought them low with labor and brick and made them slaves. So it's like I said, he's running down our history, right, to this guy to let him know where we've been and where we coming from and where we're going, right? So he's letting them know, like, when we was in Egypt, we was a mighty nation in Egypt, but then we became a threat to the Pharaoh, and then Pharaoh had to subjugate us and put us in slavery, but also too, when you understand the whole history of Egypt, it was basically a change of regime, So we were cool with the old pharaohs of Egypt, but then when the new pharaohs came over and took over, like Amenhotep and King Tut and all them niggers, came and took over, right? Then that's when the beef came. That's when all that, we became slaves. So, when you get to the history of it, that's why, like I said, I don't want to detour too much talking about them people. But then they cried unto their God, and he smote the land of Egypt with an incurable plague, so that the Egyptians cast them out of their sight. So, like I said, what it say? They cried unto their God. That's the key word right there. That's what I want y'all to understand. Their God. So this Bible is not for everybody. And the ancient people back then understood that who God was the God of. And like I mentioned earlier, a few verses before I start getting into this, the book of Job 2 and Joel 2 and 27, Psalms 147 and 19 and 20, Amos 3 and 1, you know, and Deuteronomy 4 and 19, Deuteronomy 32 and 8. All these different verses, I can keep going, all these different verses that prove who he's the God of. And these people knew that. Because you got to understand, too, back then, like every nation had their own God. Every nation had a different God to rule that region that they lived in. So they understood that. That's why like whenever the armies used to go to war with each other, it wasn't more so about this country versus this country. It was more so your God versus my God. You know. So then, if that country ended up winning, then they will look at it as their God defeated your God, right? So that's how they looked at it. So they understood who Yahweh was the God of, and Yahweh being the Hebrew name of who people around the world call God of the Bible, right? So then, then it says, boom, boom, boom. Then they cried unto their God, and he smote the land of Egypt with incurable plagues. So the Egyptians cast them out of their sight, and God dried up the Red Sea before them. And we know how they crossed the Red Sea when you get into the story of Moses, and brought them out of Mount Sinai in a Kadesh in Kadesh Barnez, and cast them forth that dwelt in the land of the wilderness, so that they dwelt in the land of the Amorites. Amorites, like I said, that is the ancient term for the so-called Japanese people. And they dwelt in the land of the Amorites, and they destroyed by their strength all of them of Esteban, and passes over the Jordan, and they possessed all the hill country, which is what we call Israel, right? And just for clarification, I know when y'all think about Japanese, I think about that island all the way in the Pacific, but back then we were all real close together. Before, you got to understand migration, the history of migration. So we were all in this, what they call a fertile crescent, you know what I'm saying? So it was all in that area. That's why we were able to, to go to war with the ancient Japanese and the ancient Chinese and so forth, right? So then, it says, boom, boom, boom. And they cast forth before them the Chisonites, the Pharisees, the Jebusites, and the Sichamites, and the Gorgesites, and they dwelt in the land many days. So we had these different battles with these different nations, and we took them out of power, and we took over that land. That's why I tell you in the book of Daniel that the saints shall take the kingdom. You know what I'm saying? And let's get that real quick. Because, that's how we got Israel the first time. Because that's what people don't understand. This is Daniel 7 and 18. That's what people don't understand. Like, they think that we just going to just show up one day and, all we got to do is say, thank you, Jesus, and believe in Jesus, then we're going to get to heaven. And if you've been following along, we understand that heaven is going to be on earth. Like when you do the Lord's Prayer, our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name on earth as it is in heaven. So that's where kingdom's going to be, right? So it says, but the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and ever and ever and ever. Right? So this is a future prophecy of what's coming. So, but that's happened again too when we left out of Egypt and went into what we will call today Israel. We took the kingdom, we took the land. We have to go fight for it, right? And just right now, how we're fighting for the land right now, because through our patience, our diligence, our faith, and keeping the commandments of the Most High, we're fighting for that kingdom right now. right? So then, so back to Judith. In and in Wisdom they sin not before their God. So that's the key part. They sin not before their God. They prosper because God that because the God that hated iniquity was with them. So this Ammon, this Japanese general is breaking it whole down, breaking it all the way down to him. He's letting them know that the God that we serve hates sin. He hates, you know, iniquity. So he was with us because during that time we were being righteous. We were following, the commandments and doing what we needed to do. So he was with us in our battles, and we became a great nation, right? So, like I said, they understand our history. They understand long as we following what God say do, they cannot touch us because we have a God that will fight for us. When we read those certain scriptures are talking about how God fight our battles, and with the little famous church song that people like to sing, the battle is not ours, it's the Lord's, right? But that can only be true if we're keeping the commandments and doing what he tells us to do. Then he will fight for us. But as long as we're doing opposite of what he asks us to do, he's not going to fight for us. Just like a parent, got a kid that's bad and not doing nothing that they're supposed to do in school. They're not cleaning up their room, not doing the chores. You know, the parent would be a damn fool if they go out and buy them something new because, cause the kid is not doing what they're supposed to do. So it's the same philosophy. We got to understand that God thinks the same way that we think when it comes to stuff like that. So when we do what he asks us to do, he is with us and he fight for us. And this general that's explaining to his king, he knows our history, so he's explaining it to him that way. Then boom, boom, boom. It says, but then it says, but when they departed from the way which he appointed them, they were destroyed in many battles. So, like I said, we got to understand, like, whenever we go astray from doing what God wants us to do, that's when we start facing these hard times. That's when we start seeing all hell breaking loose in our life, or, how they say, all these different storms coming up, because we went away from what he asked us to do, and what he wants us to do. And albeit too, sometimes, certain things happen to test us to make sure that we, stay in line. But a lot of times too, when the stuff happens, it's because we went astray. We stopped following what he wanted us to do. So it says, when they departed from the way which he appointed them, they were destroyed in many battles and very sore, and were led captive into the land which was not theirs. So why are we in America? We were led captive into a land which is not theirs. In the temple of their God was cast to the ground, and their cities were taken by the enemies. So this is why we stuck here in America, because whenever we don't follow the laws of God, one of the punishments, and that's in Deuteronomy 28 and 68, that we will be led away captive, right? And just get that real quick. To start at 64. It says, and the Lord shall scatter thee among all nations from one end of the earth into the other. So, like I said, this is a punishment. When you go to Deuteronomy 28 and 15 all the way down to 68, these are a list of punishments that God will choose to use against us whenever we disobey what he's saying. And he's just not going to punish one person. He punished the whole nation. But you got to understand, Daniel, everybody that been to church before, you know about Daniel. He's a prophet. He was a righteous man. But guess what? The whole book of Daniel is written while he was in slavery. All right. Ezekiel was in slavery. Jeremiah was facing slavery. The book of Ezra, slavery. All these different, so you got to understand, so you can have these righteous people. Even when you read the book of Revelation that was written by John the Revelator, which was, one of the 12 disciples. John was in jail when he wrote that. John was in prison, or what we call today house arrest, when he wrote the book of Revelation, right? So we got to understand, like, God judges us as a nation. You might go through your individual stuff throughout your life, but when it comes to God passing judgment, he judges as a nation. So it says, and the Lord will scatter thee among the people from one end of the earth unto the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy father have known, even wood and stone. Let's jump down to 68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. How do we get to America? With ships. By the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt not see it no more again. And there thou shalt be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen. So what happened to us when we got off those slave ships? We were sold to our enemies for bondmen and bondwomen. And no man shall buy you, meaning, that's an old Quaker terminology, meaning nobody's going to redeem us out of our situation. That's why we're still stuck here 400 years later. Still here. Malcolm X tried, Martin Luther King tried, the Black Panthers tried, Marcus Garvey tried, Elijah Muhammad. All these people stepped up to try to help us, but we're still here under this subjugation of America. Right? So, hold on, let's see if I can get one more. I think this is what I want. Right here. This is Revelation 11 and 8, right? To let you understand, when it says that it's going to, well, the verse we just read, Deuteronomy 28 and 68, where it says that he should bring us into Egypt again with ships, and by the way whereof I spake unto you, thou shalt not see it no more again. So meaning we're not going to see the physical land Egypt again, or our homeland again. It's talking about a spiritual Egypt, because the word, when you get into the whole word of Egypt, the word Egypt means bondage or slavery, a rock in a hard place, how we might say today, a narrow strait. That's what it means. Because you got to understand, the ancient name for Israel was Mazraim. So it's just that Israel became the term that ended up sticking over the years, just like the word FAG, right? For a while, that meant a bundle of sticks. But nowadays, when you say FAG, that means somebody's sexual preference, right? So, and it also can be what they call a derogatory term for somebody that has a different sexual preference, right? So words sometimes change their meaning over time. So the word Egypt was never called Egypt, right? That's the name we gave to it because Egypt means narrow strait, bondage, or slavery, right? So then, so let's read this. It says, Revelation 11 and 8. And their bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which is spiritually called Sodom and Egypt. What is this America called? Spiritually. That's the key part. The key word is spiritually, meaning it's America is in the spirit of Sodom and Egypt. And we know what was going on in Sodom and Gomorrah. The type of animalistic behavior that was going on in Sodom, right? And then we know in Egypt that we were slaves in Egypt. We built a lot of those treasure cities that we see that's famous today now in in Egypt. So it says their dead bodies should lie in the great city, which is spiritually called Sodom in Egypt, right? And that great city is America. America is that great city. America is the top hegemony of all these different countries, right? And it says, and their dead bodies shall lie in the street of that great city, which is spiritually called Sodom in Egypt, where our Lord was crucified. And how is he crucified? Because our people are being shot down in the street by the police, with our hands up, screaming, "Don't shoot!" Or we being choked out, talking about we can't breathe. Or you go back to the early 1900s, how they used to have a lynchathon. They used to lynch us all through the southern states, and so they still abusing us to this day. You know, and still abusing us to this day. So so then, like I said, so we know where all that come from. So like I said, so you got to understand that. You got to understand, like when we get into this thing, like spiritually, what this thing is speaking of. So America is spiritually Sodom and Gomorrah. That's why a lot of that stuff that goes on here, unthinkable things that happen in America can be likened to Sodom and Gomorrah. Then the oppression that we face here, could be likened to Egypt. You know, that's why when you look on the back of your dollar bill, you have a pyramid of Egypt. That's why when you go to Washington, D.C., they have the Washington Monument, which is what they call an olimus, or I forgot how you said. That's the same thing you might find in Egypt. You did? So, boom, boom, boom. So just read it one more time. It says, "But when they departed from which he appointed them, they were destroyed in many battles, very sore." This is back in Judah chapter 5, verse 18. Um, uh, in battles very sore, and were led captive into a land which were not theirs, and the temple of their God was cast to the ground, and their cities were taken by their enemies. So that's what happened to us. Then it says, "But now they are returned to their God." Key word again. We understand English. Their God is possessive. It says, now that they return to their God and are come up from the places where they were scattered, and have possessed Jerusalem, they were their sanctuary, and are seated in the hill countries, for it was desolate. So he's telling you that we now we have returned to our God. We got our power back. Because the word God just means power, because that's not his name, it's just a title. And it just means powers or powers. But like I said, his name is Yahweh, right? And Yahweh is our power, all right? So it says, "But now they return to their God and come up from the place where they were scattered, and have possessed Jerusalem, where the sanctuary is, and seated in the hill country, for it was desolate. Now before my Lord and Governor, if there be any error in this people, and they sin against their God," like I said, we gotta understand he's the God of. That's why I keep emphasizing that. And not just me, the Bible is emphasizing who he's the God of. So if there be any error against their God, because like I said, we got to understand our relationship with God is based off of contingency. All right, it's not just because you say Lord, Lord, Jesus, Jesus. Oh, I believe He died for my sins. That does not make you you know all good. You got to understand that this whole thing is based off of contingency. So and God love is conditional. It's not unconditional. It's conditional. That's what you got to understand. If you do this and that, then God is going to do that and this. So that's what you got to understand how this contract works. Because when we came out of Egypt and we stood on the Mount Sinai and accepted those commandments and laws, we came into contract with the Lord. And when you into a contract, I don't know if you people ever sign a contract, but I know we're familiar with like record labels and musical artists that sign contracts, or athletes or whoever that sign contracts. All that stuff is based on uh, is based on contingency. You know, conditional. Like you have to do this, then we will do that. You have to do X amount of this, and then we will do X amount of that. All right, that's how this thing works. Then it says, now, therefore, my Lord and Governor, if there be any error against the people and they sin against their God, let us consider. Oh, my bad. Oh, let's jump up to 19. My bad. That's my bad. So it says, but now they were, let me go back to 19. So, but now are they returned to their God and come up from the place where they were scattered and possessed Jerusalem, where their sanctuary is, and seated in the hill country, for it was desolate. Now, therefore, my Lord and Governor, if there be any error in this people, and they sin against their God, let us consider this shall be the ruin. So this brings us to the whole point of this video. If we sin against our God, this will be our ruin. So this is why we're still stuck here in America at the bottom of society. And you see what they promote here in America. Everything that's against God. When you read this Bible, and they teach you that the words of God don't matter anymore. You got to get with this new age stuff, right? This new age religion and all that crap, right? But we see how they understand how to take us down, because all of our strength, all of our power comes from God. We are the prince and princesses of the Most High. So if we're not following what God tells us to do, we're easily a prey to any nation around this world. They easily can take us down, because that's how it is set up. God call us Yasra Allah, which means prince. He is prince with the power. That's what it means. He is prince with God. So if we are the prince with God, we have that power. But then when we separate ourselves from that God, from Yahweh, then all these other nations have the capability to take us down. That's why we're here in America stuck. That's why we suffer 400 years of slavery here in America. That's why we suffer from the Jim Crow, the redlining, all the discrimination that we go through, the police shooting us down, oppressing us, pulling us over for no reason, a lot of times, and shooting us just because we're reaching for our license or insurance, all that stuff. It says, now therefore, my Lord and Governor, if there be any error in this people and they sin against their God. How are we sinning against our God? Because we're going around eating crap. Like when I look on Facebook, I know some of y'all gonna hate me for this, but I don't care. When I look on Facebook and I see people stories about, and they got like on their stories crab and lobster, all these big ass shrimp and big old spider legs. That's all you eating is spiders, water spiders and water roaches. That's what you're eating when you're eating crab and shrimp and lobster, right? You're eating all these spider roaches and spider roaches and shit. I'm saying spider roaches. Eating all these water spiders and water roaches. That's all you are eating. You're eating insects of the water. And God told us not to eat those type of things. So that's disgusting, when you understand that stuff. And that's why we're downtrodden here in this society. That's why we have to look on the news and see our people getting oppressed. and read about stories about, our black children going to these different schools and getting discriminated against or bullied by white people, white children in their schools, you know, because of this stuff. Because, then what else? So you got them promoting shrimp, crab, and lobster, and our people love that stuff for whatever reason. I'm glad I wasn't never a big seafood eater, you know. So it ain't hard for me to not eat that stuff. But our people love that stuff. But God tells us not to eat those things. If you're gonna eat seafood, it has to have fins and scales. If you're gonna eat anything that come out the water, it must have scales and fins. Okay, catfish does not have scales. It has fins, but it does not have scales. So you should not eat catfish. Catfish is like the rats of the ocean. Stop eating that stuff. If you want to be blessed by God, stop eating shrimp, crab, and lobster and catfish. Stop eating that. Stop eating shellfish. I hope none of y'all is out there eating octopus. Stop eating squid. Don't be eating no snails. Don't be eating clams. None of that stuff. Anything you eat it. It has to have fins and scales. You can eat salmon. You can eat perch. You can eat those little flounders. Flounders. Uh, I don't know because I don't eat seafood at all. Totally. Period. So, but you know what I'm saying. Fishes that have scales and fins. That's what you can eat. Not these bottom feeders. Stop eating bottom feeders. All right. Stop eating all this bacon, pork, and stuff. Stop eating all that stuff. Because God told us not to eat that stuff. But you go to church and church tell you go to church, they got ham all through the thing. Especially if they have little specials, gatherings and stuff, and something going on at the church, they got food afterwards. You're going to see some ham. And then you're going to have the pastor or whoever praying over the food. You think God is actually hearing those prayers? You praying over stuff that he told you not to eat. That's crazy. And then you wonder why you have high blood pressure and gout and all this other stuff, health problems that go going on with our people that we lead in the statistics of. See, that's the problem. Like I started off talking about how we in the bottom of all these statistical categories, but when it comes to negative stuff, we are in the top of the statistical categories of these things. And that's crazy. Why? Because we're eating all this stuff that God told us not to eat. So when we reading in Judith, in the book of Judith, this Japanese general is telling this Assyrian dude how to defeat us. And he's telling them that, look, if they sin against their God, it's easy pickings. We can take them down, right? And one more quick story. I ain't gonna lie to you. I mean, I stopped eating bacon. My son is 4. I stopped eating bacon about maybe a good 5 years ago, right? Bacon, ham, and all that stuff, right? So I ain't gonna lie, it took me, it was a 2-year process of me to stop eating pork. It wasn't that I was trying to stop eating pork because the God said it. But it was just like after a while, I just stopped, I just kind of lost the taste for certain things, right? But then as, I got increased in knowledge, I stopped eating it because of, I know that God said that we shouldn't eat it. And so let me tell you how crazy it is. So, I know a lot of us might think McDonald's French fries is the best, kind of good, right? We love McDonald's French fries. So I'm at work one day. So like I said, I'm like 2 weeks in of me slowly, me said, you know what, I ain't gonna eat no more pork. And not to mention before I really buckled down on that, my baby mama, right? And I hate saying that word, baby mama, but my child's mother, she was getting on me one time because this is when I was trying to do the whole Israelite thing, and she was getting on me because I was still eating pork, even though I was calling myself an Israelite and doing all this stuff. So she was still getting on me. So then I felt she embarrassed me. She got me good. She cut me deep. She embarrassed me, right? I'm like, damn, if I'm supposed to be supposed to lead by example, I can't be eating pork. So I said, forget it. Boom. I'm going to just go stop all that, right? So now, as I finally made up my mind to stop eating pork, now here comes McDonald's, punk ass McDonald's. They come out with, the French fries is already good. So then they come out with cheese fries with bacon. So I'm at work, going on my lunch break. So I used to go to McDonald's sometimes. So then, as I'm going to McDonald's, I see the sign in the window of the bacon cheese fries. I'm like, God damn it. Like, as soon as I stop eating pork, I want to come up with bacon on the cheese fries. And me and my friends used to have a joke where we say, bacon make everything better. So I'm like, so already, French fries is, McDonald's French fries is decent. You throw cheese and bacon on top of it, I'm like, God damn. Shit. But I did not get the bacon cheese fries. I did not. Okay, I got me like a daily double hamburger, right? But so what I'm saying is, that's how they keep us in sin. That's how they keep us, right? And by promoting these certain things, like you got Wendy's got the Baconator and all that stuff. So and we eat this stuff and we eat it and we think that it's good. It might taste good, but you don't understand the health problem that comes with it, and then you don't understand that it is a sin that comes with that, right? And and even boom boom boom, where we at? I don't want to lose my spot. So even too, like as far as me smoking weed too, right? Cause I started smoking weed like going on 6 months, right? And this is how crazy it is. Since I started smoking weed, it been more. I mean, it been a few people that was like, oh yeah, you stopped smoking weed, yay, right? Clap it up. But then it been more people that's been like, oh well. It been more people talking about I think it's 66. It been more people talking about oh yeah, you'll be back, right? Like they waiting for me to go back to smoke weed. I'm not gonna smoke weed. Cause I've been around people that have smoked, and I've been around, and they'll tell you I didn't ask for it. A lot of times I don't even, like I said, I won't even be around if I know they're doing that, whatever, right? It's not because I'm weak, because like I said, I've been in areas where people are smoking weed, and it didn't affect me. If anything, now I hate the smell of it, right? Um, so, but then, too, as far as that, um, my what got me, into it, this, what it was, my sister friend, she like I said, she got down on me too. What I'm saying? Because I was trying to do my whole Israelite thing. And I was at the moment I was trying to stop smoke. I was trying to stop smoking weed, but I was trying to find something. But yeah, I was trying to stop smoking weed. But then, like I said, she gave me that extra push because she got me the same way that my child's mother got me. She embarrassed me. She hit me. She cut me deep. So I'm like, if I'm gonna be an example, I'm gonna have to stop smoking this weed. Because like ain't nobody gonna take me serious if I'm still smoking weed. Because they gonna be like, all right, well, yeah, you saying all of this and that, but nigga, you still smoking weed. I just smoked a blunt with you yesterday. So, so as a leader or so-called leader, I'm like, okay, I gotta lead by example, right? So I'm trying to find this one verse too as I'm talking. Let me see. For y'all can know that it's not a game. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. Isaiah 66 and 17. So now this is Isaiah 66 and 17. Now this is an end time prophecy, right? This is like something that's going to happen in the end times, in the future. So this is another thing what we got to think about. It says, let me start at 16. For by fire and by his sword will Yahweh plead with all flesh, and the slain of Yahweh shall be many. So when God come back in these last days, when God makes his appearance, his grand entrance onto this earth, a lot of people is going to die. It's not going to be like how they tell you in Christian church, oh, God's going to come back and everything going to be all cool. No, God is coming back to destroy and to kill. And after he destroy and to kill, then we are going to rule this world with an iron fist forever and ever, like we read in Daniel earlier. And it says, for by fire and by his sword will the Lord plead with all flesh, and the slain of the Lord shall be many. They that sanctify themselves and purify themselves in the garden behind one's tree, meaning either you praying over this stuff or you sneaking and doing it. It says, purify themselves in the garden behind one tree in the midst eating swine flesh, and we know swine is the pig, pork, eating swine flesh, and the abomination in the mouth shall be consumed together. So you see that pork and eating mouses or rats is put in the same sentence. It's like together. God don't make no difference between you eating a rat or eating or eating some pork. Then what it says, shall be consumed together, said the Lord. Meaning God's going to kill you for eating that pork. Whether you die on this side of the world, this side of things where you might have that high blood pressure, that gout, that hypertension, and then you end up finally having a stroke. Or when God actually come back and crack that sky with him, with his son, and or you die then if you're still eating it. So understanding this verse, I knew that I had to not eat pork because when shit hit the fan, when God come back, I don't want to be destroyed. I don't want to end up dying just because I like bacon so much. All right, so you got to make your decision. Like, is your salvation important, or do you like that baconator? Right. So now let's get back to this. Go back to Judith 5 and 20. Now therefore, my Lord and Governor, if there be any error against the people and they sin against their God, let us consider this to be their ruin. So this is how these other nations is able to rule over us and to subjugate us, and then we have to march in the street, hands up, don't shoot all the damn time. And let us go up and shall overcome them. But if there be no iniquity in their nation, meaning we're doing everything that God tells us to do, let my Lord now pass by, lest the Lord defend them. So he like, look, if they doing everything that God tells them to do, leave these people alone, because God fights for them, and He will destroy us if we go against these people. And they on point, they doing exactly what God tells them to do. Please leave these people alone, because we will be destroyed if we come against these people. Because that's how powerful our God is. And it says, but if there be no iniquity in their nation, let my Lord pass by, lest their Lord defend them and their God be for them. See, what are we reading here? Their God be for them, right? So, like I was saying earlier, back then, these people, before the Renaissance era and the Roman Catholic Church and all that stuff took over everything, these nations understood who God was. They understood who he was the God of. It wasn't no misunderstanding because they had their own gods that they followed, and we had the Most High God that we follow. And it says, but if there be no iniquity in their nation, let my Lord pass by, lest their God defend them, and their God will be for them, and we become a reproach before all the world. Meaning, we're going to be just like how Egypt is, a desert. Because, because God destroyed Egypt and turned that place into a desert. That's why there's so much sand now through Egypt. Egypt is just a tourist attraction nowadays, where you can see how great Egypt used to be. He destroyed that place, and they telling them, look, if we come against these people, God will destroy us. If they on in line, keeping the commandments and doing what God asked them to do, we will be destroyed. And Anagon had finished these sayings, and all the people standing about in the tent murmured, and the chief of men, Holofernes, and all that dwelt by the seaside, and in Moab spake against that he should kill him. That he should kill him. So they got mad at dude for bringing out the truth. Like, man, what you talking about? So they wanted to kill dude after he got done telling them what was going on. For they say he will not. For they say they will not be afraid of the face of the children of Israel. So they got prideful. Like, man, look, we forget what dude talking about. We're not afraid of the children of Israel. We're gonna fight these people anyway. So that's the pride of these other nations. They think that they have more power than us when we with our God. So we got to understand how these people think and why we're in this situation, because they knew the formula how to take us down. As long as they promote this type of lifestyle towards us, not really a lifestyle, a death style, should we say? It's not a lifestyle, because black people, we don't have a lifestyle, we have a death style. And as long as they continue to promote that, they know that they can rule over us, they can control us. They know these things. That's why they promote all that stuff through our music and through everything else. They know how to get us, right? So, and we got to understand that. And it says, for they say we will not be afraid of the face of the children of Israel, for lo, it is a people that have no strength nor power for a strong battle. Right? So they looking at our numbers and they don't understand that us as a people, we don't deal with the numbers. Because we'll come and fight you with 10 people, and you can have 100 or so, and we will win because we know that God is with us. That's when we are in our righteous state. So it says, now therefore, Lord Holofernes, we will go up, and they shall be a prey and be devoured of thy army. So they, so after dude, they general try to tell them what was up. Like, man, we're not gonna be able to fight these people if they got their God with them. And so, but their other members of the army and stuff was like real prideful. Like, man, forget all that. We got these niggas, right? And so, like I said, so the point is, these other nations, they understand how to keep us down. That's why they promote all this, this so-called culture towards our people, and we goes along with it. We follow it, and we eat it up. You'd be surprised the stuff that they put pork in. They put pork in toothpaste. They put pork in almost anything that you might think that you would say to yourself, why would they put pork in that? And they probably got it in there. They put pork in everything. That's why you got to research. They put pork in noodles, like the little ramen noodles that people like to eat. Got shellfish all up in, like the flavors that you use. Got shellfish all up in the flavor. So that's why, like, now, and I love noodles. I do. Anybody know me, they know I love noodles. So that's why now the noodles that I do eat, I eat the Nassan noodles, the top ramen. I don't eat the regular ramen noodles. I eat the one that says top ramen because top ramen is a Muslim country and they don't do the whole shellfish and the pork and stuff like that. So I eat those type of noodles. And they put, like I said, put it in toothpaste. They put it in everything that you might not even think of that is in, but it's in there. That's why you have to do the research. Because this place is like all geared to keep you at a low state, and they know as long as they keep enough of us sinning in a way, because when we're in sin, then we are away from our God. Because God is not like how you think. God, if you in sin, God is not going to deal with you like that. And so we've been taught Christianity thinking that God, what they say, God hates the sin but love the sinner. No, it don't work like that. And because God hates the sinner too. Um, so check this out. Get two more verses, then we out of here. Just to prove my point, because like I said, I don't do what the pastor church do. The pastor church will take one verse and be preaching for about a whole hour. Don't even really be hitting on what the verse is talking about. He might take like one part of that verse, like two words out of that verses, and make a whole sermon off of it. Right? Let's get this real quick. Workers of iniquity. No, hold on. So this is Psalms 5:5. The foolish shall not stand in thy sight. Thou hatest all workers meaning the people of iniquity. This is Psalm 6:8. Depart from me, all ye workers, not just, oh, God hate the sin, but it says, ye workers of iniquity. For the Lord has heard the voice of my weeping. Right? Let's get one more. So, like I said, we got to understand what type of God we serve. So now this is John 9:31. We got to understand this. It says, now we know that God hear not sinners. So when you wondering why your prayers are not being answered, and you got all these prayers that you've been sending up, and you wonder why they not being answered, because it says, for we know that God hear not sinners, but if any man be a worshiper of God and do his will, and his will is the commandments and keeping the laws of God, him he hears. So it says, now we know that God hear not sinners, but if any man be a worshiper of God and do his will, him he hears. So when you going through your little spells and you seeing your prayers not being answered, ask yourself, what commandments are you keeping? Are you keeping the will of God? Because it tells you here that God does not hear sinners. And you say, well, we all sin, comes short of the Lord, right? That's the stuff that they teach in Christianity, right? Now, yes, it do say that we all sin because we all have sinned. But once you start following the commandments, you don't sin no more. That's the whole point. Because what did Jesus tell that woman that they try to accuse for adultery? He said, go and sin no more. He didn't say, oh, it's cool. You committed adultery, so we all sin. He told her, go sin no more. Meaning, once you start following the commandments, you don't sin again. You don't keep doing perpetual sins, because that's not okay. Because God did not give us a license to sin. So I'm gonna end it with that. Hopefully that was edifying, and we're gonna get down into like the whole book of Judith too, because Judith is a powerful sister from the tribe of Manasseh, which will be today what we'll call the Cuban people. So we're gonna get into that. The whole, how she, helped save the nation of Israel with her act, right? So yeah, I'm gonna say shalom, peace, and all that cool stuff. And I hope this was edifying. So shalom.